sitting with his children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. It was time for the old man to continue from the day prior. One of the little ones spoke up, asking, "Grandfather Alfred, could you please continue with what you mentioned yesterday?" Alfred looked confused as he hoped that their young minds had actually forgotten. He said, "And what might that be, little one?" Without even skipping a beat, the little boy said, "The Vox War. You told us that you would tell us how the humans act when they are pushed too far?" Alfred seemed to grin just a little, realizing that such a young mind repeating his own words back to him showed a great degree of intelligence. With this, he began to think about what the future might hold for this young one. Because of this, he was stuck in his mind for a moment, but came out when Alfred was actually touched on the arm by another one of his grandchildren, a teenager this time. Alfred's mind cleared and said, "Where was I? Ah, yes, the war." It was a perfectly clear day when I was readying myself for employment. It would be a long day, but at least the weather was beautiful. As I passed by one of the humans returning from his morning cardio exercise, which I still don't understand why they do, I shared some pleasantries, of course. When I mentioned that it was such good weather, he responded, "I just hope it stays this nice." It was an odd retort, even for a human. When I asked him to clarify, he mentioned that he used to work for a human government. I do remember seeing his uniform once. It allowed him to blend into the foliage almost perfectly. And in his own line of work, they had a phrase, "Really bad things happen on nice days, so keep your guard up if you can." I had come to listen closely to human phrases like this. Many are what they call proverbs and can actually teach you much when put to good use. I kept my guard up, of course, and was actually able to avoid a collision on my way to my employment. Though it did make me a little paranoid that day. I made sure to watch for myself and actually had a very good day. It is until we were getting ready to go, we composed ourselves to go back to our warrens, and that's when alerts blared out across all channels. Emergency broadcasts ranged through every single device that we had, even those that were up on the wall. Looking, it was clear that a fleet had suddenly arrived. The Vox have never been our friends or allies, or anyone's friends or allies for that matter. It is noted that the Vox only saw strength. Their own religious doctrine dictates that all not of true birth, i.e., Vox, shall be placed in chains to serve. Those that deny then deserve nothing but death. The Vox themselves are very large, standing nearly 3.5 meters tall, a deep green on their skins, but not truly reptilian. They do grow hair and actually lots of it, but in patches scattered all around the body. It's strange, there's no symmetry. Their muscular physique, though, could pick up my own transport with only one hand. With two hands, they could actually pick it up and throw it. The Vox actually do have 6 limbs, and all 6 can actually swap back to either being used as hands or used as feet, depending on how they want to use it. If using them just for speed, they can reach speeds that are, well, incredible, considering their size. Looking at their fleet, we had no chance against them. We're just not set to fight off armadas of massive size. Listening to the transmissions, it was clear that our own governments were actually trying to stall the Vox. This is when the humans suddenly cut in and made communications with the Vox, claiming our world was under human protection. They moved the few ships the humans had between the Vox fleet and our own fleets. I didn't understand why they would risk everything to protect our home planet. That is when the Vox demanded tribute from the humans. When the humans refused, the Vox demanded the ships as compensation for slowing down the invasion. Again, the humans out and out refused. The fight in space began at that moment, and the human civilian ships are far more nimble than we had originally given them credit. They would dodge, dip, dive, duck, and dodge all the non-guided munitions, and their point defenses, once raised out of their hidden compartments, would take care of all the rest. I was able to get inside the Warren while my mate watched the battle on her view screen. It was at that moment that one of the human ships seemed to glow a bit. I didn't understand, and then I saw as it sent out a stream of energy into one of the Vox ships, completely destroying it as though the entire internal compartment just caught on fire. Seeing a civilian ship do this would make any leader rethink their strategy, but not the Vox. They suddenly seemed desperate to disable and capture the human ships. Even the human ship that had suddenly entered the sector on a simple trade run was assaulted by the Vox before they even knew what was going on. At this point, a few of the humans had actually launched to the surface in pods of all things, abandoning their ships, at least it seemed that way. What we did not know at that time is how far the humans would go if you messed with their boats. Many of them would simply explode suddenly into balls of light, scorching the closest Vox ships. One suddenly turned on its FTL engines even though its crew had already left, and turned itself into an FTL missile, and it proceeded straight into the nearest Vox battleship. The results after all the human ships were destroyed was 1 Vox battleship destroyed, 3 Vox destroyers destroyed, 2 frigates completely obliterated, and 9 corvettes either completely destroyed or adrift. Barely scratching the surface of the Vox numbers, unfortunately, but we had hope that the Vox would actually reconsider after such losses to so few ships. There wasn't even a half a dozen human ships in orbit, so would they reconsider? They did not. The Vox invasion rammed its way to the surface. Our defenses were actually effective, but we just did not have enough of them. When the large Vox shuttles reached the ground, those behemoths inside scurried out as though the transport was actually on fire, rushing across the landscape in a flood of flailing limbs and bulbous nature. They landed all over the planet and actually began to pilfer and destroy everything. Those on the ground simply attempted to run away. As fast as the Vox are, they cannot change actually directions all that well. And this is what helped many get away from the initial touchdown. But those that were caught were placed immediately in chains, and we knew they were going to be auctioned off as slaves. Those captured and found unfit to be slaves were either killed instantly or used to fulfill the Vox's belly. Those large jowls they have are able to open wide enough to eat a fully grown weapon. Yet they preferred to bite the victim in half and savor it as the blood dripped down its jowls. When the females they found attractive enough, or the males they found attractive enough, or the young they found attractive enough, the Vox would assault them in front of everyone before either throwing them to another Vox to do the same, or simply crushing the victim underfoot. My mate and I were in a desperate mode to try and leave the neighborhood at this point. Perhaps we could hide in the forest, we thought, like our ancestors did. As we hurriedly packed, I could see Bill slowly walk out of his warren as though he didn't have a care in the world. He was wearing that strange outfit or uniform, whatever it might be, with so many items attached to him. A lot of pouches that seemed random until I looked close. They were actually strategically placed and were completely full. As he walked through his front yard, he ignited something in his mouth. I didn't understand what it was, though I will admit that the sweet aroma drew me just a little closer. As he exhaled the smoke from his mouth, he pulled something off his back. "This is for you, sir," he said, handing me a human ballistic weapon. I was not exactly recognizing this one, but then suddenly I realized his speech pattern had completely changed. It was dark and serious, like when he dealt with those thieves when he was about to blow their heads off. When he handed me the weapon over, he showed me how to use it really quick. "Should be good enough to kill one of those six-limbed fucktards. Just to make sure you aim center mass," he said this while pointing at his chest. "Now don't aim anywhere else unless you have no choice and it's not exposed." I thanked him for the weapon and the advice, of course, before he handed me some strange satchel he called a bandolier. Inside was several magazines full of ammo, and it was heavy. I wanted to leave at that moment and actually offered to take Bill with us. Then a Vox broke right through a warren that was right down the road. We could see it. Bill turned and said, "Shit. Sir, you get your family to safety. I'll slow this bastard down." I immediately ran towards my transport as Bill ran straight to his place. As I got the children secured, I looked and saw Bill. He was dead still as he had come back out of his house. Turning to look at the Vox, I could see that it was consuming a man while actually assaulting the female I'm assuming was his mate. In one of his free hands, there was the two small children, one in each. A young boy actually started striking at the Vox's hand with some sort of object, but I couldn't make out what. The Vox, feeling this, looked down and then simply crushed the boy in his hand, popped him like a balloon. The older sister screamed in horror, and the Vox lifted her up to his face and licked her with a tongue that was still covered in her father's blood. Before I could even do anything, Bill began to fire with that ancient human weapon. The belt of ammunition trailed into the pack that was now on his back. The heavy machine gun bolts ripped into the Vox, making it screech in pain. As it dropped the two female weapon it was holding, Bill simply yelled, "Over here, you son of a bitch!" The sound of each burst was deafening as he fired those 6 to 9 rounds each time. Each one he fired off his shoulder, making sure that the rounds would actually hit. It was clear that the recoil was actually forcing him back a little bit each time as he couldn't actually keep walking forward, but he just kept going. He might just slow down a bit, but he would just keep going, firing a burst and then waiting a few seconds to fire again. With each burst, he said the same phrase. As sheer hate echoed across his eyes, he said that same phrase with every squeeze of the trigger. "Die, motherfucker, die! Die, motherfucker, die!" And that was with each burst. It was a rhythmic. So rhythmic that I thought he was using the phrase to actually time his shots. Seeing this, I was so stunned. I was in a trance. That was until Jake grabbed me by the shoulder. "Sir, you've got to get out of here. Take your family and go, sir." Snapping my mind back into reality, I ran to my transport and began to leave. I pulled up next to Bill and Jake as they stood next to each other. In my rear view, I could actually see Balthazar running towards us in a different but similar attire as Bill and Jake's. I yelled to Bill and Jake to hurry up and run. Jake said, "We're not running, sir." I asked, "What are you going to do?" Bill turned and looked at me with those eyes of unmatched determination. "We're going to kill them all, sir." Before I had a chance to process anything else, my mate started screaming at me to just leave. As we turned the corner, another Vox actually arrived, and it was kind of shocked to see us kind of like go in front of it like we did. This one looked at us for a moment before being perforated by 3 different high-caliber weapons. We knew where these shots were coming from. It was that time that we left for the deep forest as fast as my transport could go. From there, we would listen during the day and night to the echoes of the human ballistic fire mixed in with our own military fighting back. We hid in fear and only came across one Vox while we were out in the woods. Bill was right. I was shaking far too much seeing this thing to actually aim straight, so I missed its two hearts. However, the heavy bullets did pierce its lungs, taking the Vox down permanently. Though after dealing with it, I suddenly remembered Bill's words to hold it tight into my shoulder or it's going to hurt. Trust me, it hurt. It was difficult to survive the 3 weeks out there in the woods. Looking back, I should have actually taken up Jake's offer to go camping, as he said. But we pulled through regardless. I remember the slightly dreary morning as I saw a bunch of Vox shuttles just all of a sudden leaving in unison. It was like they were all trying to go. It was that old phrase about the last person around has to pay for the check. This was odd to see them all leave, though, but it was welcome. And as I turned in each direction to see each of these shuttles leaves, I realized that we had actually survived the invasion and smiled as all the shuttles went into the cloud cover. Then something odd happened. A bunch of colorful flashes lit up the morning sky. I could hear rumbling as the lights flashed in the clouds, and then the shuttles returned, all of them tumbling through the atmosphere as they burned, leaving smoke trails behind them. Then I saw what looked like strange rain coming down, and then human ships coming right behind it. The humans had come, and they looked pissed. By the time we returned home, the humans had secured the planet, though our warren was damaged. Thankfully, though, it was still intact. Others were not exactly lucky. As I went into my office, I worried about how we would actually survive after this. Our infrastructure has gone to hell. We got no food left in the house. What are we going to do? The humans are limited in number, too, in comparison to the Vox. Though right now, how would I feed my child and my pregnant mate? This is what I worried about, and I suddenly realized I was thinking more human. It was about that time that I noticed a message on my datapad. It was a simple written note, which had my name written on it in human. I knew what it was. They showed it to me. The note itself was from Bill, and it said, "In times of survival, it is human custom to open up your home and share your resources. So, go to my basement and walk to the south wall. You will see a numerical pad. Punch in the code of your child's birthday, day and month, and take what you need." I was confused, but I did what the message told me. And after putting the code in, a hidden door seemed to slide open. It looked like something out of one of those old Earth movies with tons of supplies, weapons, gear, and everything we would need to survive. Along with this, his garden was actually still intact, though it hadn't been tended to in 3 weeks. That is when it hit me. Bill left this knowing he would not survive the invasion. I never saw him or Jake or Balthazar ever again. They had killed hundreds of Vox in a distraction to keep us safe. That's the only explanation I could think of, at least until another group of humans arrived to check on us. The humans were actually surprised how healthy we were, and I explained our situation. They were very somber as they looked onto their datapad. I could actually see from the other side, being that's transparent. I could see Bill's face and some sort of insignia right next to him. It was a strange mountain-shaped lines, seemingly stacked on each other, and below it a bunch of curved lines under it. There was something they were not saying, nor did I really want to know at that point. Instead of asking any uncomfortable questions, as the situation was already pretty messed up, I offered them the meat from Bill's storage. At first they declined, thinking we would need this sustenance. However, we reminded them that we are strict vegetarians. They are not. They originally thought there wasn't going to be much there until they saw how much Bill had actually stockpiled. And needless to say, this lightened the mood for the humans a lot. As I look at what the Vox did, I understand how and where they stoked the rage of the humans, what made them want to come in guns blazing. First, they demanded tribute and stole the humans' boats, as they like to call them. Second, they attempted to enslave a friendly population. Humans really don't like that. Third, they assaulted the adults. Fourth, they hurt the children. All this was enough to enrage humanity enough that they would actually fight for us and fight by our side. However, the war, for us at least, was over. Yet the Vox had pissed off the humans. That was bad enough. But their next mistake they did, oh, that could doom a species.